Hi people. I'll be bringing a lot of subjects into this video, I'm going to try and make it quite concise and not too long if I can. Um, any one of these subjects are worth talking about in their own right, but the world in 2022 is quite an uncertain, place, time. We are in a very uncertain time. Um, I'm always reluctant about any prophecies of World War III because we can look at many examples in ever since World War II of international incidents and periods of tension that have been described as potentially the new World War III, and that hasn't come to fruition. I'm always a little bit wary of that, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. And actually, a point about global conflicts. In the in the general narrative, World War One is a conflict from 1914 to 1918, World War Two from 1939 to 45, or 37 to 45 if you include the Second Sino-Japanese War. But actually, individuals, including Winston Churchill, suggested that it was the European conflicts of the 18th century actually heralded the first global wars. So that would mean the 7 Years' War um, was the first world war, the first global conflict, in the sense it involved all the great powers of the day and it was fought on several continents. But that's perhaps being pedantic. Um, the Cold War, of course, there were periods of tension. There was, of course, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the lesser known events of 1983. I've got a book about that actually when the world also came dangerously close to all out war. Um, and even since the end of the Cold War, there's been a number of international incidents and periods of tension. But I'm not sure if I can remember a time when so many things were happening at once in terms of um, amalgamating towards real question mark as to where we are heading. So, just looking around on the international level, we have obviously the Ukraine tensions right now. I think it's very possible there could be another all-out war there. Um, and I think it is very possible that Vladimir Putin won't stop at Ukraine. The former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper famously confronted Putin. Um, he said, "I guess I'll shake your hand, but you need to get the hell out of Ukraine." This was actually quite unique. No other Western leader had been that blunt with Putin, so fair play to Harper. But he said that Putin has a massive chip on his shoulder. He's clearly a skilled leader in terms of the fact that he knows how to control a major country for 2 decades. He's no fool. But I can see where that analysis comes from because it seems that Putin does always feel like he has something to prove. Now, there will be those who say that NATO has inflamed its current crisis by expansionism and by inviting Ukraine to join NATO. Probably it hasn't helped if we're being totally honest. But honestly, I think Putin will find any excuse, and it does not change the fact whether Ukraine is in NATO or not. It is a sovereign country, and that's something Russia cannot get away from. Ukraine is a sovereign country, and as such, when it is under threat, it is in the interests of the international community to be concerned at Moscow's intentions. And may anyone living in the Baltic states or Ukraine would be justified in being concerned about what Russia is going to do. And bear in mind, this is not hot air. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. So there is a precedent to this. The Winter Olympics is coming up in a few weeks. And in 2008, of course, the Georgia War broke out. And it was widely seen that Russia took the Beijing Summer Olympics opening ceremony of that year as an excuse to invade Georgia over the South Ossetia crisis, whilst the world was looking at Beijing. Um, Today, it could be a similar situation, although these Winter Olympics aren't quite getting the same level of attention. But then you look at other things going on in the world. It isn't just between Russia and the West. And let's be honest, there's been tensions there for a long time. Certainly with Britain since the Salisbury um, incident. If we look on the world scale, China is equally tense right now in terms of China's relationship with the West, probably the worst it's been for decades. Um, Xi Jinping is also a totalitarian leader who has amalgamated a lot of power. When he came in, without giving the full history here, because it would take a whole video, but I remember I first went to China actually when the transition was going on and Xi Jinping became not only president but chairman of the Communist Party and later also head of the military. Now he consolidated all the power positions in Chinese politics, whereas previous presidents had kind of been a collective leadership. Um, but what's happening in Xinjiang and the Uyghur concentration camps, let's call them what they are, um, is deeply concerning. China's ultranationalism right now, it threats to retake Taiwan. That's not hot air. I think it should be taken very seriously. And any nations that have voiced concern of that have got a sharp rebuke from Beijing. So, one recent example of this is Lithuania. They found their diplomatic staff facing immense pressure. And, that's just one example. There is a whole range of things going on between the West relationship between Russia and China right now. Um, then you have the Kazakhstan crisis earlier this year. That might seem like a regional issue, but it may not be geopolitically a very important country, but it's a large country, and certainly where it's placed, it has there's vested interests there for both Russia and China. Um, then we look at the situation with North Korea. Apparently, they've tested more missiles recently. I think the whole Singapore summit was hot air. I think Kim Jong Un was biding time. I think Trump was misled. Um, a lot was also Trump grandstanding to an extent. Um, the idea that that would lead to, changes in the human rights situation or North Korea giving up its ambitions, it seems to have just fallen on hot air. There's many who believe Biden's weak. Um, I'm not sure I agree with that 100%. I don't think it's quite fair to say some of the stereotypes of Biden being senile and out of touch. Um, I think that's a little bit of hyperbole, but I just think it's too early to really know with Biden. I think the Afghanistan situation was certainly a big distraction. Um, I mean, I'm not downplaying it, but there's a whole range of things going on right now. And then we look at the West itself. Brexit Britain, well, Brexit's been done. I think that's no longer an issue, but I think it would be a false narrative to say that we are absolutely confident of our place in the world. As for the United States itself, there is severe tensions and divisions going on there. It's sad to say, but there are. The culture wars are just a huge distraction. And I think that they also distract from these tensions with Russia and China. Um, the partisan divide in America is probably the worst it's been in my lifetime. And that is bad news for the world's biggest, most powerful country. I was going to say the world's biggest democracy. Well, let's look at the world's biggest democracy, India, in terms of population. Under Narendra Modi, nationalism has been on the rise. In my opinion, India is going down a bad path. I think that there's a very extreme right wing element in India among Hindutva nationalists. Delhi pogrom, and I believe that's what it was 2 years ago, was an indicator of this. Um, but looking around the world right now, and of course, added to all of this, we're coming out of a deadly pandemic which has caused significant divisions. It's caused enormous problems economically and in terms of disruption to life, it's very hard to see a lot of optimism in the world right now. And I'm someone who believes that the world's a big place. It's never all bad. But in terms of geopolitical tensions, it's hard to be optimistic right now. There's a lot of bad things going on, and there's a lot of very real concerns. I think nationalism is on the rise around the world. I mentioned India, certainly China, but we're not totally immune from it in the West. Um, I mean, when you look at also issues to do with the migrant crisis, for example, on the Poland-Belarus border, any one of these things, you could find examples of it at other times in recent history, but I can't think of a time when so much has been happening at once in terms of tensions. And I don't lose sleep over it, but as a citizen of the world, it's on my mind. Um, now, as a Briton and a Westerner, my big concern is the culture wars are distracting us. I think we do need to be very assertive, and I think we need to certainly defend our country. I think we need to be much more assertive with authoritarian regimes, particularly Russia and China. And I think we also need to be careful not to play into the hands of those who want to divide us. I'm sure there's a lot more I could say with this, but looking around the world, it really is, without wanting to be too cynical or depressing about it. I'm sure there'll be good things out there as well, but I do think the world is really in a rather tense time right now. I mean, you look at the rise of the far right across Europe, but then that's not overly surprising when Europe's had years of Islamist terror. And there's an extreme naivety in the political left that sort of takes this approach of speaking out against and trying to combat the far right, understandably so. I mean, I loathe the far right. Um, these ultra nationalist parties, um, and some of the narrative that they come out with, particularly conspiracy theories, and just it's very concerning. Well, I mentioned the pandemic. Actually, another thing that we've seen emerging, particularly in Western societies, is increasingly vocal anti-vaxxers, and it's the prevalence of conspiracy theories. It's interesting that seem to be so strong in Western countries. Ironically, where we have more access to information and more access to free media and so on, um, suspicion is possibly higher. I mean, you don't really see conspiracy theories in China in the same way, except against the West. Oh, it's COVID was a CIA plot, that sort of thing. But you don't really get internal conspiracy theories. So wherever you are in the world, whichever country you're in, I appreciate there's different contexts, and I can't tell anyone else how to feel, and I can't say, your country has the same context as mine. You need to feel the same way. But I would say wherever you are in the world, wherever you are, whether you're a fellow Briton, whether you're another Westerner, you're Canadian or French or American, or you're from another part of the world, you could be Indian or Japanese or Brazilian, whatever it is, please, as a citizen of the world, just use logic. That's all I ask. I don't say you have to agree with me, but try and think logically. Don't go to extremes. Think logically and think reasonably, because I do fear the world's heading in a bad direction right now, and it concerns me. I don't think we're necessarily going to see World War III, but I think that there's a lot of things going on right now, and it's probably not all bad. I'm sure there'll be plenty of good out there as well. But I do think it's fair to say that we're in a tense time. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I'm totally on the fence with this. I will always, 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 always defend the principles of liberal democracy over those of totalitarian states. And I'm patriotic. I care about my country. If I think my country's being unfairly maligned, I will speak out. But I'm not a nationalist. Um, I'm also a citizen of the world. And I'm pleased to say I have friends all over the world. Anyway, I'll wrap this up, but I just think that now more than ever, we need to get back to basics. We need to just, as individuals, what governments do may be beyond our control, but as individuals, we can owe it to ourselves as citizens of the world to just be reasonable, to look at things in a reasonable way. Don't go to extremes. Don't believe wild conspiracy theories without basis. Or if you're going to go down that line, at least follow your own credentials and question the sources that you're looking at as well. That's all I would say. Um, because in the end of the day, this might sound a bit tripe or a bit cliched or something, but think how big the universe is, this little planet of ours. Um, you know, we all have a duty to make it better. And that means looking at the better angels of our nature. Whatever faith you have or none, I think very few people genuinely want a bad world. So, Um, I would also say, just in closing, governments aren't people. So, you know, you may dislike certain country because of the behavior of its government, but don't extend that to disliking its people. Very important. Okay, thanks for watching.